Interstate 270. Yeah! Alright, the Royals are playing St. Louis for a 2-game series, so we're going to look at a quick little St. Louis thing here. We got I-270, and we'll take a brief look at 255, although 270 obviously is the belle of the ball in this case. Let's take a look at the route. I've got 270 here. We're starting mile 1 at I-55 in the southern end of St. Louis, and it loops around the western side and then goes over the northern side and over into Illinois. All right, let's take a look at north and east, rather the inner loop. So we're on 255, and here is our junction with I-55, signed for Memphis and St. Louis, and we are now signed 270 for Kansas City. All right, makes sense. Yet, at the very first random interchange that we meet, we have Chicago signed, 270 North Chicago rather than Kansas City. So not sure why they're skipping Kansas City there. Our first major interstate that we're going to meet, exit 5, is going to be 44 and US 50 for St. Louis and Tulsa. You're watching Control City Freak. This is the YouTube channel where we talk about highways and the places that they're signed to. If you dig this kind of content, why not give us a like? And if you really like it, why not subscribe? Yeah, subscribe. Back from my week off, and I hope the numbers are cool. Let's take a look at the I-44 interchange. We're meeting I-44 and US 50, and it is signed for Tulsa and St. Louis. I-44 goes to both of those places. US 50 goes to neither. We get a laundry list of exits coming up: Doherty Ferry Boulevard, Manchester Road, and we see I-64 is coming shortly. Here is Missouri Highway 100, Manchester Road. I believe near here, or part of it, was Route 66. So Route 66. And we'll take a quick look off at this exit here. And right here at this ramp is the pickle jar, the famed pickle jar in St. Louis. Apparently this pickle jar has been left there since 2012. And this was requested by TNS22X. So thank you so much for that request. Really appreciate that. That request was made on YouTube by doing a $5 super thanks, which anybody can do for any video, for future videos, or for the future request show. You can also make requests at the Patreon at certain levels, so if you subscribe to the Patreon, hey, it helps the channel, and I really appreciate all of you who do. At the 100 interchange, we are still getting 270 North Chicago, so still no Kansas City. Here's where things get a little hairy. Now we're meeting I-64 along with 40 and 61. In St. Louis, this road is still known as Route 40. We see 64 is signed for Wentzville in St. Louis. We are on North 270 for Kansas City and Chicago. So Kansas City comes back right now at the exact wrong time, because if you're going to Kansas City, you're better off getting on I-64. It shouldn't say Wentzville for I-64 there. It should say Kansas City. It's a slightly faster route. Usually there's less traffic that way too. So 270 North, Chicago, and Indianapolis, something like that would work here. We're meeting Route 364 for St. Charles, and we still remain on 270 North, Kansas City, Chicago. We are meeting I-70, our parent route, and it is signed west for Kansas City and east for St. Louis. Signing 70 that way is fine, because if you're at this point and you're going to Kansas City, you're going to take 70, you're not going to go back to 64. You see the airport is also this exit, and now we get 70 West Kansas City, 70 East St. Louis, 270 North Chicago. And our next exit, I don't know, I always like these street names for some reason. St. Charles Rock Road, that sounds cool, and Natural Bridge Road. You imagine it going over some natural bridge. And now we're meeting 370. I don't know why this is not Interstate 370. I've driven it a few times and it certainly appears to be beyond interstate standards, so I don't know why it doesn't get the shield. And it's signed west for St. Charles County, which in this direction makes sense. We also get Missouri Bottom Road, which is where Missouri is in the SEC each year. We're getting McConnell Boulevard and 170 South for Clayton in 2 3/4 of a mile. Kind of a weird number there. We're meeting US 67 Limburg Road. 61 sometimes is on Limburg Road as well, but it joined on with 40 and 64. And we're still getting 270 East Chicago. And here's our actual exit for 270. We get the airport on there and 170 South Clayton. Could say 170 South St. Louis because you're going to hit 70 first, but Clayton is fine. That's where it gets to with I-64. And here is West Florissant Avenue. There's a lot of Florissant avenues around, and this is kind of a major road in this part of St. Louis. We get another laundry list here: Newhalls Ferry Road, Route 367, and Belafonte Road. On 367, we do get south for St. Louis, so we actually get St. Louis on this sign. In theory, all of these southbound streets will go to St. Louis in one way or another, but I guess this is a bigger, more important arterial here. And now we're getting Riverview Drive, and we see that it is also a Lewis and Clark Trail thing. Maybe not Lewis and Clark, some kind of historical marker. And this was also Route 66 as well, coming over the Chain of Rocks Bridge. This is our last exit in Missouri. And now we cross the Chain of Rocks Bridge. There it is, looks lovely. The old Chain of Rocks Bridge over there in the distance. And on the Illinois side, I could not find a Welcome to Illinois sign. They're kind of weird and squirrely about putting their signs up, but we are getting the somewhat important Illinois 3 south for Granite City, north for Alton. And we're seeing the Great River Road that'll follow the Mississippi is north 3B, south 6A. And the random interchanges, we are getting 270 East Effingham, 270 West St. Charles. We're going full IDOT on this now. Wow. We were assigned for Chicago, now we're assigned for Effingham according to this. Come on. And interestingly, the pull-throughs in Illinois stop being for Chicago and start being for Indianapolis. You'd think that Illinois would want to promote its own city, especially since it's been Chicago this whole way. But now, no, we do switch to Indy. I understand the argument for Indy as well because where 70 actually goes, and if you go straight, you'll be on 70 East. And we're meeting 255 and 255, kind of where 270 touches itself, where it loops around. 255 is signed for Memphis and Alton, because Alton is for Illinois 255. Getting 159 for Collinsville and Edwardsville, and we are showing signs for 70 Indianapolis and 55 St. Louis, Chicago shortly. 70 goes to St. Louis too. Weird that they don't mention that. And in fact, they stick with the bit. We get 55 South St. Louis, but 70 West is also on that carriageway, and it's also going to St. Louis. And we just get 70 East Indianapolis. They don't tell you where 70 West goes. Now we will get 55 North Chicago Springfield next right. And here is our ramp for 55 North. And now we merge in with the 70 through lanes, which are coming off of 55. We actually go straight. They exit that to join us. So that shall end 270 in this direction. We'll look at southbound or westbound 270. Here is the start of 270 coming off of I-70, so we see North 55, Chicago next right, 270 West Kansas City straight ahead, and 55 and 70 for St. Louis. So this time they do mention that I-70 is leaving, maybe because we're on I-70, so they kind of have to. Boss King Inc. wanted to see this. He wanted to mention that 270 is a really great bypass, and it really is. If you're coming from Indianapolis or Chicago and you want to move on to Kansas City, then 270 is a much faster route than taking 55 and 70 down into town and then back out. This is quite a well-designed bypass here, I agree, and thank you so much for that request. On northbound 55, we see 70 East Indianapolis and 270 West Kansas City is how they are running things here. But at random interchanges, again, we are getting Effingham and St. Charles. At these sorts of things, not so bad, but an overhead sign putting Effingham up there out here instead of Indianapolis or Chicago, with all the big cities you could be using, just pretty ridiculous. We're meeting 255 once again, so North Alton and South Memphis, and we'll see that again soon. And here is our Highway 3 and spur for the Great River Road, and we are assigned for 270 Kansas City. We cross the Chain of Rocks Bridge once again, so here is the Mississippi River. And we do get a Welcome to Missouri sign and Lilac Avenue coming up here. We're meeting 170 once again. It's signed for Clayton in this direction as well, along with the airport. Coming off of 170, 270, not surprisingly, is signed for Kansas City and Chicago. We're getting this exit 370 for St. Charles County. That works, but they almost could sign it for Kansas City. Taking 270 to 70 is like 1 minute faster to get to Kansas City, but if there's any traffic in St. Charles at all, you're better off being on 370 instead. On 370, we also get 270 North Chicago and 270 South Memphis. I don't think 270 goes north at all from here. It basically goes due east. And here is our exits with St. Charles Rock Road and East 70 St. Louis, West 70 Kansas City. Coming off of I-70, you get North 270 Chicago and South 270 Memphis, so no big surprise there. And now we are meeting I-64, now we're getting 270 for Tulsa and Memphis, so Tulsa finally gets in the game. I do think it does make some sense to sign Tulsa going in this direction, not so much the other direction. And we are getting East 64, 40, 61, St. Louis West for Wentzville, which is a little better going in this direction, but probably should still just be Kansas City. I mean, let's face it, 64 and 70 meet in Wentzville, so Wentzville traffic would have exited off of 72, so it's not like Wentzville is a good fill in there. They could also go with Chesterfield. That could work as well. And now we're meeting I-44, and I-44 we're getting east for St. Louis and west for Tulsa. Coming off of I-44, you get 270 North Chicago and 270 South Memphis. And now we've got Missouri 21, Tesson Ferry Road. This exit was requested by CSG Polo, so thank you so much for that request. He requested it because he's kind of from this area. He has a lot of good memories of South St. Louis County. Here is our last exit on 270. We're meeting I-55, so we're getting 55 South Memphis and 55 North St. Louis. 61 and 67 are here as well. And now we're getting 255 for Chicago, which doesn't make any sense at all, because if you wanted to go to Chicago, you're better off going northbound on 55 to get there than staying on 255 here. Looking at 255 coming from I-55 North St. Louis, we are getting 270 West Kansas City, 255 East Chicago. Maybe they want through traffic to go around, but honestly, you're better off going through town if you want to go to Chicago. And coming from southbound 55, we see the same cities listed. Alright, let's take a look at Todd's the way it should be for I-270. I'm going to say it should be inner loop, Kansas City until I-64, and then Chicago on up from there. Outer loop, Kansas City up until I-70, and then Memphis from there, although I'm fine with having Tulsa signed as well. Alright, let's take a look at 255. Yeah! So we'll start 255 already in progress because we already saw the I-55 interchange for it. So we start with this 61 and 67 and Telegraph Road coming up shortly. We see that the exit numbers have restarted, so it's exit 1B and exit 2 going in this direction. Going the other way on 270, it's exit 1, exit 2 like that. So kind of weird that it's exit 1 no matter what direction you go from I-55. And we get a laundry list of exits: Telegraph Road, Coke Road, and Illinois Route 3. And now we cross the bridge over the Mississippi River and into Illinois. This time we do get a Welcome to Illinois sign. We're getting 255 North Chicago and East 50, South 3 for Columbia. This is a somewhat major intersection, so I think signing Chicago from this point is fine. And here is our actual split: 255 Great River Road, 50 East Chicago, because 50 has joined us on the Missouri side at LeMay Ferry Road. And so now we're getting 255 North, 50 East Chicago, and Illinois 3 Cahokia Heights, East St. Louis. So we get East St. Louis up on there, sensibly, because 3 does go right into East St. Louis. We meet I-64, and US 50 will leave us toward Louisville, and 64 will go to St. Louis the other way. We are signed now for Chicago and Indianapolis. And now we meet I-55 and I-70. Inbound, they are signed for St. Louis. Outbound, they're signed for Chicago and Indianapolis. Sensible. However, kind of weirdly, we're now signed for 2 I-270. I don't know about that. Illinois with their 2I whatever. And when we meet 270, we are signed for Alton on State Route 255, and 270 is signed for Indianapolis and Kansas City as well. It should be. Although they could have Chicago thrown on there too. I guess Chicago traffic would have already exited. All right, let's take a look at southbound 255. So coming down Illinois 255, we get a pull through 255 South Memphis, and we get 270 for Kansas City and Indianapolis. No mention of Chicago once again. And a random interchanges, we're getting 255 North, 2 I-270, and South Memphis. Illinois doing a long shot and doing Memphis and not some sort of smaller town along the way. Here we meet 55 and 70, so 255 South Memphis, 55 South 70 West for St. Louis. Coming off of 55 and 70, we have the choice of 255 South Memphis, 255 North, Interstate 270. Once we're south of that interchange, random interchanges sign us for Chicago and Memphis. So you can sign Chicago over here, but you're signing Effingham over... IDOT. And we are meeting 64 and US 50 again, 64 50 East Louisville, 64 West St. Louis, and we are getting 255 South and 50 West for Memphis and Tulsa. And this exit was requested by Bruce Telfeyan. He wanted to see 255 and 64, so thank you so much for that request. Bruce also wanted to mention he thinks the whole thing should be numbered as 270 instead of 270 and 255. The rationale being it's a loop around a major metro area and consistent with other loops like 275 in Cincy or 435 in Kansas City. A single route number designation is clear and uncomplicated. Bruce also mentions that in today's reality, the extension of 255 as a state highway to Alton makes the change problematic. And I do think that the numbering should be changed. It's ridiculous that these roads have 4 systems of numbers. I do think that they should probably renumber it. Start at the 55, 70, 270 interchange in Illinois as exit 1 and just loop it all the way around, or start at 255 where it starts. Either one should be exit 1. And here's our interchange with northbound Illinois 3 for Cahokia Heights and East St. Louis. We get a major split with southbound Illinois 3. It is heading for Columbia, and 255 south, although we're going to be turning slightly north here. We are heading northwest a little bit, mostly west, a little north, but 255 south, 50 west, Memphis and Tulsa. And we cross the Mississippi River once again for the last time in this episode. And we're getting Jefferson Barracks Historic Site, Civil War Museum. Civil War Museum in Missouri. Didn't both sides fight to keep Missouri out of either side? And now we are getting 55 for St. Louis and Memphis coming around. US 50 is going to be leaving us to join US 61 and 67 on Limburg Boulevard. I don't know why US 50 doesn't just stay on this pavement and exit 44 instead of going on through some city streets and rejoining 44. It's a little weird. And now we meet I-55 once again at our exit 1 on both sides, and we are getting 270 Kansas City, and that will be the end of 255. All right, let's take a look at Todd's the way it should be for I-255. I'm going to say the outer way on I-255 should be signed Louisville, not Chicago, but Louisville, because that's kind of more the direction it's going. Then Chicago from I-64, and then after 55 and 70, it should be signed for Alton. I mean, Illinois 255 is signed for something, so why wouldn't you sign the interstate for the same thing instead of 2I-270? Who's going to 270 there? Inner loop, Memphis. The entire time, southbound along through Illinois, sign it for Memphis. If you throw Tulsa in there too, that's cool. But Memphis the whole way, the way they do it is fine. All right, thank you so much for watching this episode of Control City Freak. I really appreciate it. Go Royals, and we are going to US 12 next week between Detroit and Chicago. Why are we just doing that little part? Well, the Chiefs play a preseason game in Detroit, and they also play one in Chicago, so I gotta split up my 2 Chicago parts. We play Detroit first, so that's why we're focusing on Detroit next week. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Control City Freak, and until next time, my name is Todd, and keep on trucking.